You are listening to the Slow Living Podcast, and I'm your host, Stephanie O'Day. What if I told you that you could truly have the life of your dreams, the life you've always wanted, one filled with abundance, joy, and a sense of purpose? It's absolutely possible, and I see it each and every day with my coaching clients. It all starts with learning how to slow down. You deserve to live the life you've always dreamt about. Let's get started. Hi there, Slow Down Society. Steph here, and we are on episode 141 of the Slow Living Podcast. And I am so happy because my friend and mentor, even though she might not have even known that she was my mentor, Elise Bauer, is in the house with me today. And Elise is amazing and wonderful. And it sounds so silly because I'm not a tongue-tied person, but I really do fangirl when I think about how thoughtful and just supportive and caring Elise has been throughout my kind of online writing career. And I reached out to her a few months ago because she popped in my head. And she popped in my head back in episode 124. And I was interviewing Liz Elting, who wrote Dream Big. And she said in that interview that once you've quote unquote made it and you're at the top, do not pull the ladder away. Help people up the ladder. And the first person that popped in my brain was Elise. So then I found her on LinkedIn. And then because she is amazing and wonderful human, she wrote back right away. And so Elise, you are here. Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for saying such sweet, nice things. It's really a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to also look to see what you've been doing since you were the crock pot lady. And because I've sort of checked out a lot of social media, I sold Simply Recipes, which is how you know me, the site I founded over 20 years ago, but I sold it several years ago and then really left management of that company and pretty much fully retired about a week before the pandemic started.
So all of that timeline makes sense because I was searching through my Gmail of when I started to realize that the Simply Recipe newsletters were not actually written by you. And I'm like, okay. And right around 2019, I think is when I read the full retirement letter.
Yeah, so I still am marginally involved where I answer some cooking questions and I'm available to the staff there if they have any questions about any of my recipes. But my brain has moved on, right? As
I'm glad.
I assume as yours, right? It's
Yeah.
moved on, it's doing different things. And when I read that you were involved with something called slow living, I thought, oh, well, that's what I do.
It is what you do. It is. To explain how much influence you've had over my life is kind of weird because I haven't told you. Not because I didn't think you could handle it or you'd get a big head, because I think you probably already know how great you are. But I needed to find a way to stay home with my kids and needed to start and wanted to start writing online. And so Jenny Lauk, our mutual friend Jenny Lauk, got me a job at Blog Her doing the headline editing. And so that's how
Jenny Lauk.
good
Wonderful.
old Jenny Lauk. I know. So Jenny Lauk also threw me my first baby shower, and also sort of convinced me to embrace motherhood. Her advice was, "You'll never think you're ready, and you'll never have enough money, so just do it anyway." I'm like,
that's great advice. And as someone who never got to be a mom, I applaud that you took that path because unfortunately, if you wait too long, then it actually becomes very difficult, if not impossible. Yeah.
that part is true. That part is true. So Jenny got me reading blogs, and so I fell in love with your blog and realized that you were writing these recipes, but you weren't like oversharing. You weren't like that kind of what we call now like influencer or aspirational, like, look at me writing. You were not that person. You were sharing facts, and
Yeah.
this is how I cooked, and this is what I did. And so, and then again from you, I learned SEO, which is search engine optimization. And then later, later after you had all your success, I you sold it. And the idea that you could walk away and be at peace with that and, like, quote unquote retire early without like being elderly also sort of blew my mind. So you really have shaped me in so many ways.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey. That's interesting. You talk about not oversharing because I mean, I know you're familiar with the story that I was home sick. I was living with my parents. I was sick with chronic fatigue. I had moved home after I got sick the same time my roommate got brain cancer.
Mm,
She died. I stuck around for a little bit to help get her stuff taken care of. But then I just wasn't getting better myself, so I moved home with my parents. So I was very sad. I was in my early 40s. I felt like a complete failure. I hadn't been able to work for 2 years. I'd gone through my savings. I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have kids. I was in my early 40s, and one of the things I wanted to do with my life was have kids, and I didn't do that. So here I'm feeling like a complete failure, living at home. And I just had to really focus on the anything that was sparkle and light of goodness. And so the sparkle and light of goodness was food and cooking with my parents, and then writing about that process and doing it in a way that was teaching others. And I didn't write about what I was going through because one, I didn't want unsolicited advice, right? Like when you open yourself up, you get a lot of unsolicited advice. I was already getting enough of that from my own family and friends that was not helpful. Uh, and two, I just looked around and I was sad and in a really bad physical shape, and I just didn't want to put any attention on it. And so that's actually, there was a reason. I was like, that this is nobody's business but my own. And I don't want to put attention on this stuff that's negative in my life. I really want to put attention on this one part of my life that is loving and nurturing and can really be a benefit to others. And so that's where that came from. It was just
yeah.
a conscious choice to just focus on this positive thing and keep the
and
focus
and
off.
you had like a very large corporate career
Yeah.
already. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so this was like your second act, because I
Yes.
remember when you would speak and talk, you would pull in things from corporate America.
Yeah. I had been, I'd gotten my MBA from Stanford. I worked for Apple Computer at the time. Now it's just Apple Inc. I worked for Symantec. I worked for lots of different startups. I was an executive at an internet startup before the whole internet.com bubble went, blew everything up in 2001. So I was already 40, oh, 42 years old when I started the site.
Mhm.
I had already, had a career in Silicon Valley. And this was a big shift to move away from San Francisco, move back home into my old room from high school in Sacramento with my parents who were both retired, and
Mhm.
um yeah, and shift gears, completely shift gears.
When you built it, I know at first it had a different URL, and then you were able to buy Simply Recipes.
Yeah.
Did you have like, because you had this kind of like techie mindset, were you building it brick by brick with the idea that this is going to become the largest food blog in the world kind of thing?
I no. I was actually
And also, FYI, guys, I am not being facetious. Like, for real Z's,
That's a pretty,
Number one
it
food
was,
blog in the world.
it was at one point. I don't know about now, and I don't know
It
what, it
doesn't matter.
doesn't even
All of
matter
the
now, but.
recipes that are on All Recipes have all been bastardized by Elise Bauer. Like she was the original writer.
Ah, what I figured out pretty early was that when I started blogging, it was almost all tech and politics blogs, and it was 90, they were 90% written by men, right? So, and cooking was something that was more considered women's content, and there just wasn't much going on. And I realized as I started doing this, it's like no one is looking at this.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 2-year window before anybody wakes up, right? So
Yeah.
and it turned out to be even a little bit longer than that. I mean, think about all of the cooking and food magazines and regular print media that
They
just
didn't even have sites then.
they didn't have they didn't even have websites.
I
They
know.
completely poo-pooed anybody who was blogging, not understanding the tremendous potential that was there. So when I started it, I started actually 5 blogs all at the same time, one about wine, one about books, book reviews, one about marketing. There's another one I can't think of right now, maybe personal stuff, and then food. And food was
Mm,
it was the easiest one to write about. It gave me the most joy. All the other ones felt more like work. Try writing about
yeah.
Try writing about wine. That's very hard to describe wine. And also, if you write
You
a book,
haven't met my mom. My
oh,
mom, if you're listening, you and Elise, I should get you in the room together. My mom knows. Well, she actually worked for ATF and did the wine label regulation, so she does know a
Ooh.
lot about wine. And now she's not gonna like it that I said that.
But no,
Okay.
it's hard. It's a real hard skill. And if you just like wine, you got like, oh, it's a kind of jammy, or oh, there's if you
I
don't
know.
have
Well, and also the word mouthfeel feel is really uncomfortable to say. It's really like,
yeah.
yeah. Ugh.
I'm always delighted when I actually read descriptions of wine that match what the wine tastes like, because I think, oh yeah, someone really has a good vocabulary and language around this. Very hard. So anyway, but the food was the one, the recipe site was the one that got traction and was fun to do.
Mhm.
And I was living at home with my parents. They're both fabulous home cooks, and so I was just hanging out with them in the kitchen, writing, notes and then taking pictures. And they wouldn't even let me really cook for the first year. I was just copying down what they were doing. Yeah, like you don't know how to cook. We want to eat well. What are you
Oh,
doing?
that's adorable.
So it just took, but it was, consistently every day, figuring out what are the recipes that I really love that my parents are making. Let me at least, at the very least, it was going to be a 1-year experiment. At the end of that year, I would have at least like 100 recipes that I loved that were for my family that I could share with my friends, and at least I would have that if nothing happened. And then after a year, I thought, gosh, I'm making about $1 a day at this, but I still remember the first time I got like $1 a day from AdSense, and I was
Yeah.
bragging to my dad, Dad, I made $1
I
today.
know. So actually this is a good time to have you solidify and fact check me. I
Mm,
have said, and people have written in like, well, that's impossible. But at the peak, the crockpot site was making $1,000 a day. And
yeah.
people are like, no, that's impossible. So Elise Bauer, will you legitimize me?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Oh yeah. Yes. 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 More than that. And honestly, there are some food bloggers I know that make several millions of dollars a year with their sites.
Mhm.
And now, like this is still, but it's very hard. That's a big mountain to climb.
Very big mountain to climb.
And
Yeah.
lots of people trying to get up to the top right now. Back when I started, there weren't as many, but it did take a long time because
Mhm.
the ad networks weren't there. There was really only Google AdSense initially, and then of course Blogger started their ad network, but the ad networks weren't there. That it just the structure wasn't there to support the business the way it is now. Of course, now it's ridiculously competitive, and
Yeah.
Google changes
It's
the name.
I personally don't find it fun anymore. And one of the reasons I didn't want to do it anymore is the way the algorithm works, and
Yeah.
cookbook publishers are actually very similar. Is you change the name of, I'm just going to use a pot roast recipe, the name of a pot roast recipe and an ingredient, and then it's brand new. And I started feeling very phony baloney. Like, how many pot roast recipes does the world really need? Like, this
Yeah.
is, yeah, like, come
I
on,
could, I
people.
got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm done here. Now what I'm doing, I spent 2 years rewriting old content
Yeah,
so
you
it was
did.
fresh for the Google algorithm. And I thought, all right, this is not fun.
It's not, it's work.
This is work. This is just rewriting stuff I've already written. And honestly, things have really shifted. The last few years, things have shifted over to TikTok
Yeah.
and that's where people are. I don't think it's a great way to learn how to cook, but because there's no way to save it, no way to print it for future reference, but whatever. It's just that whole media landscape has changed. And we all knew it would,
Yeah.
right?
So that is something that I want people to pay attention to, that the only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
And you can't white knuckle and wish and hope that change doesn't happen, because
Yeah.
that's how we society evolves. Like, so you do have to get over that. So I knew what I was doing was not sustainable. And so I was happily shoveling money into different
Mhm.
accounts and stuff. We have always been somewhat frugal. You
Yep.
have as
Yes.
well. And the idea that some of our blogging friends, like, we saw them crash and burn, we saw them file for bankruptcies, we saw divorces, and like,
Mhm.
OMG, like, how could you not have realized that we were like bubbling? Like,
Yeah, but I call it like we've caught a wave, you know, and we get to ride that wave for a while. And then that wave is going to fizzle out. And there's some new waves coming in, but you may not be in that have the right skill set, be the right age, for example. I'm now 63. Like I am not going to be nor do I want to be a TikTok sensation or, it's just like, no, I don't want
yeah,
to, this isn't it. It's interesting to me to see people 10 years ago who were in their 20s really riding the wave of that social media, but now there's only so far you can ride
it's
away.
only so
Right.
far.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to constantly, adjust and move, and that gets tiring after a while. And I say kudos to my colleagues who are still doing this and are still pivoting and growing and moving, and they're learning a lot, and they still have the energy to do that. I having had chronic fatigue, which is like a disease of no energy, right?
Yeah.
Which sort of knocked me out for 10 years. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to do this. And then when I can, I'm going to transition out of it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was able to do
So I think that's why I've always enjoyed all of our chats
it. Mhm.
is, first of all, you're incredibly authentic in you. And I loved going to your classes. So she taught these amazing SEO blogging
Yeah.
classes,
Yeah.
and I followed them to the letter, and it worked. That said, some of the things, because I'm heavily frugal, and I'm gonna confess to you right now, the Crockpot site is still housed on Blogger because I'm too cheap to move it all over to WordPress. I have other WordPress sites. I
Mhm.
understand WordPress. I don't actually like it. It's clunky. I don't like plugins. I don't like all the stuff. And I can't really sell things. There's not a storefront on that site. And so I do have to have a WordPress site. But I never migrated. And so I know I didn't follow that advice. But whatever. I also had the idea though that Google helps Google. And so
Yeah.
and it did. So and also when it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. Um but but we were at a Nintendo event, and I was doing some sort of cooking demonstration, and I was mic'd, but I said something like, and I don't know, do you remember that Nintendo had this like DS, and it had a cooking widget, and it was trying to teach us things? And
Mm.
maybe you weren't at an event, I don't know, but I was there with Elisa Kimmel Page and Lisa Stone and everybody, and I'm there doing this thing, and I said, well, this is great for people who don't like to cook, and I don't even really like to cook. And then I'm doing it because it's true. I just want to put things in a machine and push a button. It has to taste good, but it's not like I enjoy the act of chopping onions and all that kind of stuff. And yet you were always like, okay, that's fine. Like that's your thing. It's
Yeah.
fine. But the foodies and the people in this audience, oh my gosh, like I felt shunned for
Oh
for
no.
not embracing like foodie culture
Oh, that's so
and
fun.
all this stuff. And then I vividly remember when they started having blogger food of like just feeling like an imposter, like I do not belong here. These people are insane with how into food they are.
I like to eat.
I do too.
Right?
Yeah.
So my cooking, like I like to cook in so much that it helps me eat well.
Yeah.
And other than that, I don't do a whole lot of fancy cooking. I'm so thankful that I know how to cook.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that I have 1,000 or 1,500 or how many recipes out there
You have a lot.
I know work and that I still use, and I can go and
Yeah.
refer to, oh yeah, I've got a recipe for that. I'll pull it down, and it's great. I already did all the thinking. I've already made it a bunch of times. So I'm glad that I don't have to do that anymore because that work is done.
Yeah. So and then you were never obnoxious about it, which I always appreciate. I remember going out to dinner and like people are standing up on bar stools to try and get the perfect angle to take a picture of their plate. I'm like, this is like what is it now? We would say hashtag cringe. Like, oh, like come on, people. Like oh yeah, it was not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. That's you just have, whatever turns you on, right? And then sometimes in the moment, especially when you're learning something new, I tend to get really into things when I'm learning something new, right?
Mhm.
And so I could easily be the person on that bar stool just because I want to go, oh, like check out that light here. But at this point, it's like uh I I I don't, I want to keep that phone in a purse on silent mode when I'm out to dinner. Unless something is absolutely stunning, but if you don't have really good light, you're not going to capture it in a photo anyway, right?
Yeah.
Or unless I was in France a couple years ago and there was an amazing dish at this restaurant and it was so, and I can't remember what was in it off the top of my head, but I did write down the ingredients and I did take a picture of it for future reference.
Yeah.
If I'm going to
Yeah.
do this, right?
Yeah.
Future reference. But I don't know. I'm not a big social media sharer in general. So, but some people are and like it. I
Some
don't,
people
things have
are.
changed so much. I mean, I think you can't just,
It's very diplomatic of you, Elise Bauer. So,
when,
so that said, before we hit record, we were talking about hustle culture
yeah,
and the Silicon Valley vibe that I'm
yeah.
in and kind of
And
go,
you're
go,
in.
go.
Where do you live in Silicon Valley? Where?
I will tell you when I get off the
Oh,
internet
okay,
with you.
okay, okay, okay. That's not fun. Right, on the peninsula somewhere, right? Okay, great. Yeah, it's all, yeah, Silicon Valley hustle culture for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, so so it is. There's tech bros with their beards and all this stuff, and Teslas don't stop here. So yeah. Um, but what was I going to say? Oh, so for the hustle culture, and then I shared with you that I was doing well, or I thought I
Mhm.
was doing well until I read the 4 Hour Work Week, and then it put me in a shame spiral because I was not doing any of those things.
I never read that book because I was sort of offended by the premise, and offended by the premise because I thought that's sort of the only way you can do that is by taking advantage of other people's labor.
That is
And
exactly it.
And
That
so
yes,
I was offended by the premise of it. And so I never read it. A
yeah,
lot of people, I've seen him speak at a conference, and he's an interesting guy because he goes and he just takes deep dives in things and learns how to do them
yeah.
well. And he's got lots of lessons. And I'm always for, extracting whatever gold you can, nuggets
Hmm.
you can
Yeah,
from
yeah.
people about what they've learned.
There's
But,
there's different nuggets. It's interesting. I do do you listen to podcasts?
yeah,
There's a okay. So if books could kill, do you know that podcast?
no,
Oh,
but that
okay.
sounds like a
So
good
they did a really interesting uh take on him. If
Okay.
you're listening to this and you listen to that podcast, there are a lot of bad words in that podcast. So don't listen if you're driving around with kids in the car. Um, but it's interesting.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm
I
writing
I
it
too
down.
have heard him speak and have been around in those circles. And I think those kind of like testosterone filled like I call them tech bro,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
vibes.
yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I shy away from, and I've always sort of shied away from.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and
Yeah, I
and so I think
told
that's
you.
why blog her especially just felt so nurturing, especially in the beginning, and it really was just lovely and wonderful.
Yeah, it was really nice. I mean, I kind of professionally grew up in tech, and I was often the only woman in a room, only woman in a meeting, and as what did there's a great quote on Meryl Streep has been running around on social media these days about like women have had to learn the language of men, and men are now beginning to learn the language of women. Well, we basically to work in tech, to work in Silicon Valley, you learn the language of men. Actually, to work in most professions, what was so wonderful to pivot from tech to food and to food blogging is to go from an industry that's 85% men to an industry that's 85% women. I think 10% gay men and maybe 5% straight men, honestly. And
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the makeup of it. And
Well, it would be fun to rewind and actually add up all those numbers you threw up and see what
let's see
see what
what
percentage you just did.
like 85, 10, and 5 is
Oh, okay,
100, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, and it's just like people are so much more alive and happy
yeah.
and collaborative and helpful. And so to go from a very like how can I use you,
Mhm.
and I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing because that would reveal too much, and
Yes.
you're a competitor even though we're working for the same company. It's just to go from this kind of a cold and harsh approach of thinking about work to something that's to a subject matter that's so nurturing. It's all about
Yeah.
nurturing ourselves and our loved ones, and it's so interesting because food's all about taste, and art in a way of how it's presented, and biology and chemistry and history and culture. It's just so inherently interesting. And then to be working in an environment where we're all our own little individual entrepreneurs, we're all out
Yeah.
there, creating our own business, and we are also collaborating and supporting each other and helping each other out, and we come from a perspective of the rising tide lifts all boats, and I subscribed to that from the very beginning, and it's something that people really resonated with. And so early on, I don't know if this is in other areas of blogging, but certainly early on in food blogging, I think most everybody was very, very, very supportive
Yeah.
and helpful of each other. And I just love that about how we created that in the culture. And I still see that because I'm still part of Facebook groups that are
Hmm.
food blogging groups, and people are supportive of each other, and we're supportive of cheering on each other's wins,
Yeah.
and commiserating with each other's problems. And some people have some real, true life and health issues that
Yes.
they're grappling with, and so to be able to just support people through their life, and to have so much, I mean, I have so much respect for my colleagues and the work that, like their creative genius and the work that they do. And that's really just a gift to
Yeah.
others.
Hey there. Are you looking for an easier way to meet your goals without sacrificing your ethics or morals? If so, you're going to want to check out the new masterclass I recorded on how to achieve more by learning how to slow down. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but I promise you that this is a proven system that works. If you're ready to finally meet your personal and professional goals without sacrificing yourself or your sanity, check out this new recording at stephanieodea.com/masterclass. Okay, back to this week's episode. Well, and what I like is that's who you are at your core. So when we first hit recording, I was saying, Diane Elting was talking about when you're up, don't pull the ladder away and help. That's how you've always been. I have searched through my Gmail to find the first email that I had sent to you in 2008, and it's still there. And I introduced myself and I said, I have an idea to use my crock pot every day for a year. And I wondered if you thought that would be a good idea or not, which was so silly now looking back on it. Like, how young and stupid and naive is
You
Steph?
sent me an email like that? Did I hope I
Yeah,
responded well.
I'll copy and paste it. And your idea was something like, you said that you get actually a lot of questions about your crock pot. And then your next line was, I think you might be sitting on a gold mine. And that was enough to be like, okay, well, let's do this thing.
Wow.
And so you helped in that. And it was great. And then you also gave me other advice at a conference in person. I was worried about something and I was hemming and hawing, and you said, no, you do it. And you said something like, you do it and then ask for forgiveness later. Like, yeah, like don't ask for permission. Just go do the thing. And I had never heard that line before.
I've also often tell, sometimes, I see this, and it happens more with women than I think with men, which is that we're waiting for the world to give us permission to really go for something. And honestly, no one's going to give you permission. They're not. They're just, in fact, most of the time they're going to say, no, 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 not a good idea. Stay in your lane. Like, don't try something different. Don't take a risk, because most people are risk averse. So don't wait for the world to give you permission to be great. Don't, just go out there and do it. And then you will just kind of create this wake of support in your path. And then if you step on a toe or two, then you can always ask forgiveness later. So, it's
it was good advice, and it came for me at a really good age and stage of my life where I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, it was really neat. It was really neat. Is hard-boiled eggs still Simply Recipes' #1 recipe?
I think banana bread is.
Oh.
It has been for a while. And the crazy thing now, I think the hard-boiled eggs recipe still does well, but I haven't had access to the stats for Simply Recipes for many, many years. So I just know that the banana bread recipe still does well. But the crazy thing about hard-boiled eggs is that the best way to hard-boiled eggs is to steam them.
Wait, is it in an Instant Pot?
No, I don't do it you can do it in Instant Pot.
I have one of those. I don't like it, but yeah, it has a hard-boiled egg button.
My partner Guy loves making hard-boiled eggs in Instant Pot because he can do so many at a time. He'll do a whole dozen at a time or 2 dozen. He can do it pretty easily in an Instant Pot. But usually I'm just hard cooking 4 or 5 eggs, and I don't even use a steamer basket. I just put in maybe, I don't know, an inch of water into a small saucepan, bring it to a boil, take it off the heat so I don't burn my hands, put the eggs in, put it back on, and then cover it and cook it for wherever, like 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 11, depending on how well. And they peel easily.
They do. They peel
easily.
wonderfully.
Yeah, and I have said that I think it's because shells are porous and steam has more, the molecules are more energetic, and so they're, maybe there's more oxygen getting in that way. I've had people say that's ridiculous. I'm thinking, okay, well then you tell me why it works. why does this work? But it does. So the best way to hard boil eggs is not to hard boil them. It's to steam
It's
them.
to steam them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hard steam them, like right above that steaming water, halfway in, right there.
right
Yeah,
there.
funny.
I wanted to ask your thoughts on AI and the new kind of wave, because I can already see, well, I see food sites coming up with them. I can see it
Yeah.
with coming up with meal plans and recipes. Um,
Question for
I,
you. Have you used AI like ChatGPT to look for recipe ideas? I have.
um,
It's interesting.
yeah, yeah. I actually really like ChatGPT. So you and I might actually geek out about this a little bit. I know that there's people who think like the robots are going to take over the world and it's the
Mhm.
end of human civilization. So from your techie background, do you think the robots are going to take over the world and it's the end of civilization, or it's just kind of a fun tool for humans to goof around with?
I think it's more than a fun tool. I think it's a very, very powerful tool. I think certain aspects of it are scary in that if you can imagine that you would program into something directive which is to take over the world, and what's the best way to do it, and directed if you just built that into the programming, then you could have a runaway big problem,
Okay.
because you've got a machine that has got pretty much all the world's published intelligence
Yeah.
at command. So I don't know. I think AI scientists, there's several who have expressed worry
Yes.
this could really be a
Yeah.
really
So
big problem.
okay, so I'm glad to hear you say that, because I too have read that and I can agree with it. But then also, Steph as a human is
Mhm.
like, okay, this is what's in my pantry right now,
Yeah.
and I am not feeling inspiration. So I'm going to plug it into Chat GPT and say, how can I turn these ingredients
Yes.
into a meal for a family of four? And then it goes, oh, certainly. And then it spits it out
Yeah.
for me. And it's just lovely. Have you
I've,
tried?
I've, I've asked for give me some ideas with these two ingredients, or give
Yeah.
me some ideas for dressings, like a type of
Mm-hmm.
dressing or sauce to go with these ingredients. And I've been very happy. And the thing is, it helps when you already know how to cook,
Yeah.
that you can,
So that is lovely.
it,
And
yeah.
what back to, I feel like I need it to circle. You did teach me how to cook
No.
in many, many ways. And I even though I don't like it because I look at it as kind of a chore,
Mhm.
I know how to do it. Okay, done. I'll put a
But
bubble back in
when
my
you
mouth.
know how to cook, then it's just like, I've got one of my favorite books is the Flavor Bible, right? Flavor Bible, wonderful book. Flavor Bible Vegetarian's even bigger, or and because you look up an ingredient, it tells you all the ingredients that go with it.
Yes.
And so,
And once you know, like,
yeah,
oh, okay, I'm gonna
yeah,
make an Asian stir fry. Like
yeah,
I don't even think anymore. I'm like, just
right.
start pulling
You
stuff
just
out.
you just you just know what works together. So it can really help inform you. And then so in that case, I think it's a tool to help inform us. I think there's probably problems with some recipes that require specificity, because none of that stuff has been tested.
Yeah.
It's just AI coming up with things, thinking, well, we've looked at 300 recipes and we're going to,
Yeah.
based on these 300 recipes, we're going to give you this. And hopefully it works, but
Yeah.
we,
I in a way I sort of wish it was there when I was trying to come up with something new every single day, because I think it would have been very helpful.
have you
Um,
tried asking ChatGPT for your bio? That's a very interesting exercise.
no, no, but that's interesting that you brought that up. A Wikipedia page popped up about me, which I thought was weird. So it's correct,
Oh,
which
good. At
also
least
is a
correct.
little creepy and weird. But there's no images, but I could do that. And then one other thing, if you're listening, some of my coaching clients tell me that like a doctor says they have to be on a low sodium diet or they have to eat a certain amount of calories and they're having a hard time coming
Mm.
up with a meal plan. and I'll say, well, have you asked ChatGPT? And you can do that. And you can say,
Yeah.
I need a 5-day meal plan that is, I'm just going to make things up, 1,600 calories and low sodium. Can you please come up with that meal plan for me? And it'll spit it out. And then you can say, thank you for this. Now, may I have a corresponding grocery list? And again, it'll spit it out for you. And
Yeah.
how helpful is that? It's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yeah. It's a great, I mean, for those kinds of things, it's helpful. I study Japanese and I ask for sentences and I also watch anime. So I was thinking,
Mm,
please give me Japanese study questions using the characters from this particular anime. And
yeah.
it gives me a whole bunch of study questions or study sentences to study and practice Japanese. It can be very fun
Yeah.
and useful. I brought the bio
Okay. Yeah.
because
Did you do it?
I asked and it came up with this really amazing bio. And I wish I'd done all this stuff it said I had done. It told me about all the cookbooks I'd written and what their titles were. And I thought, oh,
Well,
those are
you probably have because people have stolen your recipes, and we already know that as a fact.
maybe that's what they're getting it from. But gosh, I thought it was really interesting because only half of it was true. The other
Mm,
half was a hallucination. So like that's what they call them when AI makes something up. It's called a
interesting.
hallucination.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and you think it's going to write your college essays, no.
Yeah, no, it'll come up with
It-
some stuff. Oh, the other thing is
Interesting.
I had to write an essay recently and I thought, well, I don't have an editor. I like the way I write, but let's see if ChatGPT can polish it.
Hmm.
So I asked ChatGPT to polish an essay for me. And what it came back with was so awful. It was horrible. It was just
Yeah.
their ChatGPT's idea of polishing an essay was to add a whole bunch of words
Mm,
and just my view with writing is you should always use as few words as you can to get a point across.
yeah.
But ChatGPT is opposite. It's like we're going to
Oh,
embellish and embellish and
interesting.
embellish, and it made what I wrote look like a sophomore in high school had written it. I was really disappointed. There wasn't anything that I could use with ChatGPT's polishing, even though like I asked many different times, well, can you make it a little bit more direct and a little, anyway, it didn't matter. I think, okay, well, at least writers don't have anything to worry about yet
Yeah.
because yeah, they can't write. They can't write.
I in this past week, I turned in a manuscript in November. And so this past week I got my edits back and it's in Google Doc. And the first few cookbooks that I did, they mailed the pages back and forth and we wrote comments in the margins. I actually prefer that because
Yeah.
then you can like skip ahead and be like, okay, Steph, you don't suck. It'll be okay. But this, I open the Word document and because it's track changes, every single thing is underlined in red. So
Oh,
that like, ugh, like deflated feeling is so heavy. And while I could skim ahead, I don't want to miss things. So it's better to just tab ahead and do each comment at a time. But anyway, there's that. I have one question that we've been circling around, but we haven't quite done it. And I wanted to ask you when you started Simply Recipes and then how you like referred to yourself, like Blog Her. When I first went to it, I thought it was like a writing conference and bloggers. And then we started talking about like we're entrepreneurs and these are online businesses. When you started Simply Recipes, did you have that idea like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to build a business, or was it like
well,
sharing your family recipes?
from the beginning, it wasn't much of a business, right? So that first year, the most I made was $1 a day, right? It took a few years to actually make something that, I mean, my goal was maybe I could pay rent, in San
Mm,
Francisco. I'd like it to be able to pay rent. So when I recover from being sick, I can move back to San Francisco and pay rent with this and then go find a job. It'd be nice to have this as a side gig, right? And Okay, what was your question
Well,
again?
I guess like if someone asked you at the
Oh yeah, how do
time,
I
are
brand
you
myself?
an entrepreneur? Are you a writer? Like, are you a blogger? Like, how
No,
did you used to answer yourself?
I call myself a publisher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was what was on my business card. Publisher, Simply Recipes, because um from the tech world, entrepreneur to me means someone who is actually taking other people's money, and it's a very risky venture. You're actually risking other people's money to build something. I wasn't risking anybody's money. I was self-funding a business, and I was a publisher. So I was in charge of everything. I was in charge of content. I was in charge of technology. I was in charge of the 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 economics of it, the advertise. I was in charge of all of it. And so to me that sounded, and then I was hiring writers.
Yeah.
I got guest writers, and over time I actually had employees. And so yeah, I called myself a publisher. So because that's sort of how I saw it. It's like, and this is um that was my way of looking big. And the funny thing is that when you are your own, you're running your own thing with a blog, you can make yourself look bigger than you are.
Yes.
So,
A
uh,
lot of smoke and mirrors online.
yeah, yeah. Um, I once had a meeting with Google, and they had asked me like, well, can one of your people go do this? I was like, there's only one people here.
Yeah.
And they couldn't
Yeah.
believe
No,
it.
I remember going to a tech conference and someone said, just get three or four names.
Mhm.
So like I'll just say, for instance, I'm Steph at Stephanie O'Day. You I know are Elise at Elise, but they would be like, put in Georgia at stephanieuday.com and Frank at stephanieuday.com. And you can answer all of them, but then it'll look like you have a team. I'm like, oh, okay. And like this was legit advice. And people are like writing notes and like, what a great idea. And I'm like, it's fake. That's not real. Um, but so I've been scared to ever ask this to another person, but I'm going to ask it now because whatever.
Mhm.
The founding story of BlogHer was that they maxed out their credit cards, and like that idea was the central idea for all these entrepreneurs. And I always sat there thinking, this is a bad idea. Don't do this. I hope nobody else maxes out their credit cards. This is scary.
Yeah, I didn't, but uh I think to the extent you can self-fund, if you can do it, great. There's some things that uh you can't go that way, because if it's a really, really, really good idea that requires a lot of capital, then you just have to get that capital in there. Otherwise, someone else will see that idea, and then they're going to build the business, right? So it really
Yeah.
depends on what the business is. But uh, you'll find this
It is. It's tricky because they want you to like quote unquote jump and then the net will appear. And sometimes that's good advice if it
yeah.
is a good idea. And sometimes it's like, eh. So it's like, how do you even sniff out?
Well,
I don't know.
it's a good question, because on the from the business school side, they'll all say, don't ever risk your own money, risk other people's money, because other
Mm,
people, that's where you get angel investors. These are really wealthy people. They can afford to lose a couple $100,000. It's not gonna like, it's like plucking a nose hair. It's not that big of a deal. They are their money isn't as worth as it isn't as worth as much to them as that amount of money would be to you, right? So this is why people go outside, because there is capital out there for the right type of investment. I can say though that someone came to me, a friend of mine said, hey, I've been approached with this business plan. A woman in Australia is trying to raise money to start a food blog. She's trying to raise a couple 100,000, and here's her business plan. And I said, I don't have to look at the business plan. If she's raising money to start a food blog, she's dead, right? She's like, she has no idea what she's doing, because you you can't raise money to do this. Like, this is there's so much work. This is an 80-hour, 100-hour work week work. You have to work so much and you have to know so many different things. And you are faced with a learning curve that is so steep. Every day you're learning new skills. It's like I used to call my learning curve a wall. Like, right? Right, Stephanie? We
Yeah.
didn't feel like a wall.
And I had little ones in the house,
Yeah.
and I worked from midnight to 4 a.m. So I would go to bed early with the kids and then set an alarm and work for 4 hours in the middle of the night, and then I'd go back to sleep. And when I tell people that, they're like, "Well, that's crazy." I'm like, "You're right," but also I it was so fun. Like it was weird. It felt like, and I was young, so I didn't need as
You
much
know, you
sleep.
could do it, right?
Yeah.
There's
I
certain things.
but I, but I, but
You know?
it's but that's not the kind of advice you can actually give someone because it seems ridiculous.
Well, but the thing is, it's like this is where I say, look, if you want to start something like this, do not go outside for money because that will never work. Um the economics of that will never work. You have to find a way to make it work where you are self-funding, which means for me, I was lucky. I was living at home, right? So for a couple years, I could live for several years with my parents not paying rent and to build up enough momentum with the site to the point where it was actually generating me enough income to live on. Other people do it by working, like having a job. And then after a few years of like while they're working, they're starting their blog. But to actually go out and raise money to start a blog, no, you have to be so good at all of this stuff first. You have to, we learned how to take photographs of food, right? We learned how to do that. We probably like I learned video. It was really hard, and I'm glad other people do it. But we had to learn so much stuff. We had to
Yeah.
learn so much about the tech, so much about, and also the recipes and the food, not counting the actual content, running one of these
Yeah.
businesses. And
Yeah.
so,
I'm glad to hear you say that because I think sometimes people think that one, if it's like quote unquote meant to be, it's always gonna feel easy and not gonna feel like work. And then I write and about slow living and talk about slow living. And so people think, well, that means that you're just laying around on the couch eating bonbons. No, it's deciding like what you really want,
yeah,
and it really feels good in your body, and so you go for it.
yeah,
And sometimes in real life, because this is real life and we're not all trust fund kids, you have to actually work. You
yeah,
have to
no,
do the thing because like on the other side is like the Emerald City, and
there's
you
gonna be a
you
payoff.
most are living in Emerald City right now, which is amazing.
No, it's work, but it's fun. And there's something about when you're really focused, it's just the it doesn't, I mean, it's work, but it's focused and it's fun, right? So, but there's a lot of work involved. And it's interesting. So yes, I'm now in this slow living, but slow living, what that looks like today, that looked like having my alarm get up, wake me at 5:45 in the morning, got out of bed, took a 1 minute freezing cold shower to wake
Oh,
up.
do you do that?
Oh, I do,
You're
yeah, I
the
do cold
first
showers.
person in real life that does
Oh,
that.
it is the best thing. All right. But then, walk around the block because I have to just get myself moving. And then get in the car, drive a half an hour to go do Aikido, this Japanese martial art I've
Yeah.
been doing for 40 years. So that's what my Wednesdays look like. And then I come back because then I've got a 9:30 exercise Zoom class
Oh,
for an
good for
hour.
you.
And
Wow.
which is just like with four people, and it's just a lovely woman in Iowa who teaches this class. It's just really, really like just wonderful. And then I can get on with my day and do other things. But I have I've got but I'm creating my own schedule, right? Every day, every week, I do have a schedule. It's wonderful. I love it, but it's all filled with things that I want to
Yeah,
do. Yeah,
that's
so
nice.
I'm I'm not pulled by the only entity's schedule who pulls me is the IRS. right?
Yeah. What is
Right.
it? Death and taxes. Those are the
That's the
constants in
taxes,
life.
and then
Yeah.
the holidays with the family of like who's cooking what, right? So other
Yeah.
than that, everything is okay. What do I want to create? And yeah, there is definitely there is a I I mean, I worked really hard to be able to get to this point where now I
Yes.
can kind of create how I want to be in the world. I don't want to work. I want what I do to not feel like work. And if it feels too much like work, I don't want to do it. So I have stepped away from things that felt too much like work. I'm thinking there's got to be a way for me to contribute here where
Yeah.
it doesn't feel so much like work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work, work
Yeah.
that I don't
So,
want
well,
to
and
do.
we touched upon it, and I'm cognizant of our time, so I know we're
Oh,
getting close. But we touched upon it earlier when I said that you didn't realize that you were mentoring me from afar, and that I knew you were quote unquote retiring, and that was when I started looking into like that fire movement of the financial independence, retire early,
yeah,
because in my brain retirement meant 65 and over, or 70, and growing up my dad would talk
yeah.
about like quote unquote being put out to pasture. But you knew, like, okay, like it's not an age, it's an actual like monetary number,
It's just
and
it
you
has
were
to do
able to do that.
with finances. So I yeah, it's just how you're managing your finances. And there's so many interesting things to do in the world, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to contribute to the world. There are responsibilities that we have. You have children. My partner Guy, his son and daughter-in-law have a 2-year-old granddaughter who lives a couple miles from me, so I do a lot of babysitting. I get to I get to help see this beautiful, beautiful young girl grow up. And I get to babysit and
Hmm.
change diapers and dance and sing nursery rhymes and do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you there is a time in your life where you just have to, you know, do what needs to get done to sort of build that momentum so you can have the financial things sorted out. And one of the advices that I had given people all along was if you're making money, save it and
Yeah.
invest it, don't spend
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Just don't, because one, you don't know when that wave is going to crash and you're going to lose. Like I lost 75% of my traffic in the course of like 3 months over
Yes.
the first major Google update. And that happens.
I remember that
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, that happens. And so you have to just be, frugal is a good way to go about it because if you're not just spending money on things that don't make money, like lots of fashion and brand new cars every other year and lots and lots of we all know it's really easy to spend money, but you have to think, is this money I'm spending is gonna make me money?
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
at some point you want to have your life set up so that you have things that are generating income that you don't have to think about,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
generating income, and then you can focus on activities that you don't have to do in order to feed yourself and your family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, are going to wrap it up. Slow down society. I know everything that she just said. I am certain that you can see why I was so excited to have Elise, and what especially this end part is exactly what we've been talking about for the last 141 episodes. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Elise, for giving us so much time. Thank you for not even realizing how for the past 20-ish years you've molded me, and I'm so thankful, and I at some point will come close enough to give you a long and overdue, well-deserved hug. um
Yeah, I look forward to that time too. And I had no idea. I've just been, cheering you on from afar. And by the way, you look wonderful and healthy and
So
happy.
I do have the Zoom filter on high. I really do. I need to say that because I was in some other meeting. I'm like, what is this in between my forehead? I'm like, I need.
Stephanie, Zoom has filters.
Yes, you
Oh,
can.
all right.
Yes, go into the video settings and be like, yeah, I want Barbara Walters filter all the time. It's funny. Every time I go on camera, I tell the guy, I'm like, you've got a Barbara Walters filter, right?
That's really good to know. I've just learned. Now I'm gonna look like 20 or 30 years younger in my Zooms. I'm on Zoom all the time. Thank you. That's very helpful.
See, this is what we do. We help each other here.
Exactly.
All
You're
right, slow down society.
wonderful.
I'm gonna hit unrecord. Elise, I think you're amazing and wonderful, and thank you so much. Do you have a slow living story to share? Leave me a voicemail at stephanieoday.com/podcast with any questions, comments, feedback, or testimonials, and I will be sure to include it in an upcoming episode. Also, if you found value in this episode, please share it with your family and friends and subscribe through your favorite podcast provider. The more you share, comment, and leave positive reviews, the more people we can reach and share the slow living lifestyle and messaging. Thank you, Slow Down Society, and have an absolutely wonderful day.